Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I, Kashish Kumbar, Director General of Embryonic Model United Nations, takes immense pride in hosting the future branding. That is, you all. Today, we have gathered here virtually to discuss avenues of sustainable development goals because it's high time. Today, we have with us a great leader who has an extensive career in environment and development in government and international organizations. Sir has made a major contribution as Director of United Nations Environment Program and also as the chair of Development Assistance Committee. He has also held a unique yet notable portfolio of environment and international development. During his time, Norwegian aid has reached 1%, the highest in the world. Sir has also put in place the Nature Diversity Act, which is Norway's most important piece of legislation. Under Sir, the leadership of Northern Climate and Forest Initiative has been established, which provides critical inputs to UNWRE, a global coalition to reduce carbon emissions from deforestation and forest degradation in developing countries. Welcoming the great leader, His Excellency Sir Ericsson. Also, we would now like to invite a celebrated debater, writer, intellectual, and beyond all this, a very humble human being, our moderator for the day, Mr. Ritik. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kashish, for that wonderful introduction. Shalom, sir.
Shalom, good morning. So sorry for the delays.
No, sir, it was a problem for us on our part as well because we were trying our level best that the password is correct. We even tried from our side and this technical issue. So it is a privilege, sir, that we are able to resolve all these issues. And now we have ready with the introduction as well as on such a beautiful topic of rediscovering the avenues of the sustainable development in the post-pandemic world, which is a problem, and as well as there are greater opportunities when we talk about how the sustainable development should be in the post-pandemic world. So, sir, I have a very high honor and a distinct privilege to be beside you in moderating this session. And as it is incumbent on my part, I will now invite you to share your opening remarks over the issue, sir. Ericsson.
Thank you so much, and good morning to everyone. Good morning, India. I'm addressing you from Oslo, Norway. I'm so happy to be with so many young, dedicated people, which I know will want to change this world to make it really a better place. And that's why we are all into this conference. Exactly 2 hours ago, the sun turned, meaning that in the northern hemisphere, where nearly all of India is located, and as well as Norway, the days will now becoming darker by the day, while up to this point we became lighter. So we may, for a little bit of time, discuss with ourselves, is the world becoming darker or is it becoming lighter? And I'm very, very strongly on the side that we have a once in a generation chance to get it right, and that we are getting lighter. Here in Norway it's now completely light, even at 12 o'clock midnight. It's we can see the sun in most parts of the country, and it's light everywhere. And I think we are moving into a much better world. At least we have the opportunity to make the world a better place. That's not because we don't have problems. We have huge problems on this planet. Everyone knows we need to keep peace. Otherwise, the world will be a disaster. We need to development. Still, far too many people don't really know what to eat tomorrow, or they don't have the ability to provide education for their children. And we have huge challenges when it comes to the environment. We are wiping out nature, and we have climate change. So there is no lack of challenges, no lack of problems, but we have the once in a generation chance to get these right. And let me mention the 4 biggest economies or 4 most important places in the world to see how much progress there is. Not to say that other smaller nations are not important, but China, the United States, the European Union, and India are at them the 4 biggest economies on this planet. And if they can move, the world can move. Let me start in China. China now has half of all solar energy in the entire world. It's by far the biggest wind energy nation in the world. It's by far the biggest hydrogen nation in the world. China has 99% of all electric buses on planet Earth are running on Chinese roads. Very, very positively. Electric buses are now also gradually coming to Indian cities and to many European and some American cities, but 99% of them are still in China. And China has 70% of all high-speed rail. You can go in a few hours from Beijing to Shanghai. That would be the same as if you could go in a very limited number of hours from, say, Mumbai or Chennai to Delhi, to translate it into an Indian context. And maybe even more interesting, China is inventing a number of new environment technologies. In the southern part of China, they very recently had some extremely polluted rivers, horribly polluted, like some rivers in India still are. But then they picked up the challenge, they transformed them, and now they're completely clean. Everyone can go swimming there. You can send your small toddler into the river, and you would not be horrified at all. So there is huge progress in China. I mean, a few years back, it was a very, very polluted place, but now pollution is coming down extremely fast in all the big cities, and China is going green. And President Xi Jinping has promised that China will be carbon neutral by 2060, and that the emissions will peak in this decade. Moving on to the United States, President Joe Biden has made a huge number of very important environment decisions. The other day, he decided to stop any destruction of one of the big national parks in Alaska. He has promised to an investment program in green energy, solar and wind, and electric cars in the United States, which is astonishing. He will create 4 times more charging stations for electrical cars in the United States than there are currently petrol stations in the US. If anyone has been in the US, I don't think the number of petrol stations there is the big problem. They are all over the place. And if we will make 4 times more charging stations for electrical vehicles, they will completely overtake the market in a short time. Moving on to Europe, the European Union has decided that Green New Deal should be the centerpiece of the recovery after Corona. And they're moving with what's called the European taxonomy. That's a system which will drive the big financial investments in a green direction, making it much cheaper for a bank to finance a green development, say solar energy, and much more costly to finance oil and gas or coal. And in India, Prime Minister Modi is putting 1 coal plant into the shelves by the day and picking up on solar energy. He has, as you would know, he has formed the International Solar Alliance with France. India has the first all-solar rail station in the world in Assam. That's the first all-solar airport in the world in Kochi, Kerala. I once went there to speak to the guys who set up this all-solar airport. It's not a small airport. It's the 4th biggest international airport in India and Kochi because of all the people going to the Middle East and other places. And now it's completely run by solar energy. And very soon the metro of Delhi will be electric, and that's the 4th biggest metro system in the entire world. It's not a small one. Yes, true, Beijing and Shanghai may be bigger, but soon Delhi will be the biggest city in the world, and in the future maybe also the metro system, and Delhi will be the biggest in the world. So these are not small things. India now has 3 out of the 5 biggest concentrated solar power plants in the world. And when you add up this, China, United States, Europe, and India, all moving in a positive direction, it makes an enormous difference. I will add, governments are important, but at this point in history, business may be even more important. And you see many of the biggest strides in a green direction made by big companies. When Mr. Trump was the president of the United States and backslided on basically every environment issue, well, big business in the United States said, we don't agree with you, Mr. President. This is not the right thing to do. We need to act on climate. And Microsoft, which is one of the 5 biggest companies in the entire world, has made astonishing promises for the environment. They said that our company will be carbon neutral. We will add it to that, compensate for all emissions in the history of the company, whatever Microsoft emitted in the 1980s and 1990s, they will not compensate. They said we will be a non-plastic company. We will not pollute the world with our plastic. Whatever plastic we use in the company, we will handle inside the company. The big Swedish furniture giant, IKEA, they have an outlet, I think, in Hyderabad in India. They are the world leader on a circular economy, much ahead of any governments. They are setting up schemes where you don't even have to buy the furniture. You can rent the furniture. You can hand in the furniture when it becomes old. You don't need it any longer, so that some new people can buy it, and so that you create a circular economy where you don't throw away whatever what was there. And Volkswagen, which is the biggest car company in the world in competition with Toyota from Japan, Volkswagen just said, the debate is over. We will not waste any calorie on the combustion engine. That's the thing of the past. The future is electric. And in the very near future, we will make 20 or 30 different electric cars. And it will, of course, completely take over the market. Of course, the big companies of India, the Mahindras, the Tatas, they are all also contemplating how India can be a part of this. I just saw the Indian government was making a competition between companies for battery factory, so that India can set up a factory for green electric batteries in India itself and not depend on China to import these batteries. And then you create jobs as well as economic development at the same time. The old model on planet Earth was first you pollute, and then when you become rich, you clean up. That was what they did in Europe, in the United States, in Japan, in Korea, in China, and recently in India. But that's the past. That's the old model. The new model is win-win. How do we create jobs and prosperity and clean up Mother Earth and improve the situation on the planet at the same time? It's even a triple win. Win for the environment, win for jobs and prosperity, and win for people, because you get a better life, a more healthy life, a less polluted life. So it's a triple win for the economy, for Mother Earth, and for the people with the same means. And this is possible mainly because solar energy is now the cheapest in the world. And by the way, solar energy in India is the cheapest energy anywhere on planet Earth. Even more so, it's the cheapest energy which has ever existed on this planet. And that, of course, create this opportunity for a win-win policy for the future. Some people think that development is too slow, and I agree. The problems are big, so we need to speed up. But I believe that change can happen very, very fast. And let me give you one very recent example. In 2004, a small European nation called Ireland decided that we want to prohibit smoking in our restaurants. At that time, smoking in restaurants were allowed everywhere in the world. It was hard to find a restaurant at any point at planet Earth where you could not smoke. But then the Irish said, do we really want this? When we have a beer or a whiskey or a Coke, do we really want to get all this smoke? And they prohibited. At the time, I think most people were against it. The political leaders didn't dare to do it. And the beer business said we will go completely bankrupt if this happened. All restaurants will be closed down because no one will go visit a restaurant if they are not allowed to smoke. Some psychiatrists even said that the mental hospitals will be full if you go ahead with these policies, because if people can smoke, they won't get out. They can't get out, they will not have friends. And if they have no friends, of course, they will be lonely and they will be desperate and they will go to the mental hospitals. None of this happened. And now, only 15 years later, exactly the opposite is the case. You struggle to find a restaurant anywhere on planet Earth where you're allowed to smoke. Every nation has prohibited this. There is no UN declaration saying that you need to do this. Just that people see the benefit of not smoking, and then governments in, yes, India, the United States, Europe, wherever, have stopped the smoking in the restaurants. And now nearly everyone is in favor. 15 years back, most people were opposed, or at least many people were opposed. Now they're opposed, and 95% support in any country in the world for this rule. So change can happen very, very fast. The Russian revolutionary leader, Lenin, once said that there are decades where nothing is happening, and then there are years where decades are happening. And 2020 was such a year where decades were happening. There happened a lot more for a greener planet this year than in the past. This may be a paradox because India has been through a terrible time. I mean, most of you would know someone who has passed away because of COVID-19. At least when I speak to Indian friends, they always tell me that, yes, I know some neighbor or some job mate who had problems with this. It's been a terrible time. But India will come out of this crisis stronger than it was before it. And India will really come back as a dynamic nation. And more importantly, India and the world is much, much better prepared now for attacking the new problem, which is environment and climate degradation. Let me end up giving you three main global lessons from the COVID-19. Because if we can't learn from mistakes in the past, we will repeat them in the future. First lesson is leadership matters. Those nations with good leadership has done much, much better than others. Australia and New Zealand has hardly any people dying from COVID-19. China, South Korea, Singapore, and many other East Asian nations also have very, very, very few. That's because the government in these nations at a very early stage made the exactly right policies. The same happened, by the way, in India last year, when India also fought out COVID in a very impressive way. There have been more problems this year, but last year it was done in a very, very effective way. So leadership is key, leadership in government and business, but also youth leadership. Young people can lead also in society. Second lesson, we are in this together. Because if we don't work together, we will have huge problems. We need to provide now vaccines to the entire world so that every single citizen is vaccinated. Then we need to work together on this planet. And don't listen to all those who try to create divides. The biggest geopolitical problem is the competition between the United States and China. But here, both India and Europe has the opportunity to provide a third force to tell everyone we don't want this kind of global geopolitical competition. We want to work together because only together we can resolve the problems. And when you hear your friends speaking negatively about either the United States or India, don't listen to them. Please see the enormous strength of both these two main nations on the world. The United States is a fantastic nation. China is a fantastic nation. And of course, so is India. India should demand respect from everyone else. India has enormous achievement. It's one of the oldest cultures on this planet with these great sayings from thousands of years back that the entire universe is one family. It's a great nation. But so is China, so is the United States, and let's work together rather than creating global problems. And third lesson from COVID-19 is that nature is bouncing back very, very fast. When we humans stop treating Mother Earth poorly, it bounces back. We have seen it all over the planet. There were penguins walking down the streets of Cape Town in South Africa. There were deer in the streets of Japan. There were bears in the streets of Barcelona, Spain. The big national parks in the United States, they said the wildlife has an all-time party. And in many cities in northern India and Punjab, for instance, for the first time, people could see the Himalayas. I know people there who have not been able to see the Himalayas for 20 years. Now, all of a sudden, we could see the immense beauty of these mountains. Why was that? Because we humans stopped treating the planet poorly. Pollution came down, and we could see it. And that's, of course, how we want our future. We want everyone in northern India to be able to see the Himalayas. and we want wildlife to bounce back on the planet. India has the enormous opportunity now to tap into all these win-win technologies for the future. In Andhra Pradesh, farmers are turning into green agriculture. It's giving more output while protecting Mother Earth much better. Some of the central states of India, like Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, also Assam, Rajasthan, they are protecting the tigers better than in the future. Tiger population is gradually increasing. Nepal, by the way, is the first nation in the world who has doubled its tiger population. Yes, it's still too slow, but direction is right. And of course, making the tigers living well makes an enormous opportunity for tourism, creating jobs and prosperity. So protecting the wildlife is also an economic opportunity. And of course, by this huge push for solar energy, India will provide jobs and opportunities. So we are now at this point in global history where we can work together in peace at the planet for this great task of protecting Mother Earth. And if you want to look into what you can achieve, I will suggest the following. Put up on your wall in where you're living a picture of the probably, or at least one of the greatest human beings who has ever walking this planet. And that's, of course, Mahatma Gandhiji, the greatest of all Indians, one of the greatest human beings who has ever existed. Not all of you can be Gandhi. I can for sure not be that, but we can be inspired to see how much a human can achieve. Every single young person on this planet can do something to change the planet, can do something for the environment in your neighborhood, in your district, in India, on the planet. And if you all act, we can change the world. Remember that when Gandhiji came back from South Africa to India in the early part of the 20th century, the English Empire, the British Empire, was the strongest force on planet Earth. Much stronger than the United States, or for that matter, China is today. It was the totally dominating power. It was said that the sun never set in the British Empire because both causes everywhere. Then this fairly young Indian said, I want to defeat the British Empire. I want to liberate India. And of course, he didn't do it alone. He did it with thousands, with then millions of other people in India. But when he started, no one thought it possible. Very few Indians thought it possible. No Brit thought it possible. It just picked a fight. And in 3 decades, it was a very short time, he succeeded. And India, of course, became a much better place. Think of the following. When Mahatma Gandhi died at the time of liberation, life expectancy in India was about 27 years old. When you were born, you could expect to be 27. Now, life expectancy is more than 70 in India and rapidly increasing. So it shows the enormous progress which has been in India since independence, but it also inspires us to do more for the future. Because if Gandhiji could achieve this, because future big and small Gandhis can achieve miracles for this world. So let's work together, and we'll for sure make the world a better place. Let Mother Earth become great again.
Thank you so much, Eric, sir, for your brief intervention on the entire issues that we are facing right now and how the world is responding to this crisis and how we can work as a society, as a young people, young aspirants who want to donate, who wants to give a society a direction as well as to do something for the people who are not privileged enough to help themselves out. So, sir, my first question would be, as you stated in your intervention about the nature is bouncing back. So, as we have seen in the recent past, that the natural disasters have been very frequent, and our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been talking about an alliance of disaster resilient infrastructure. So, how do you think that how it is important for the world community to address such an issue and to address cohesively on this particular topic? Because if we talk about our country, we were now having 2 cyclones on both our seaboard, in which we can say that is the east. In the east we had Yas, and then in the west we had Taute, and we also saw some last year about how Indonesian capital was being ravaged by the frequent cyclones there also. So how do you think that this alliance for disaster resilient infrastructure is important?
This is a very, very good and important question. Fortunately, there is every reason to believe that we are moving in the right direction, simply because societies become stronger. In India, the state becomes stronger, business becomes stronger, but also civil society, all organizations of young and old are becoming stronger. Let me give one example. I mean, 2 years back, India had one of the strongest cyclones in modern history of India, in the state of Odisha. It was an enormous catastrophe. It was a lot of destruction, but only 10 people died. 10 people. I mean, sorry for them, but it's hardly anything. In the 1970s, Bangladesh had the maybe biggest cyclone in modern times anywhere. 500,000 died. 500,000, while in Odisha, 10. Why so few in Odisha? Not because of the forces of nature was not strong. Mother Earth hit Odisha very, very hard, But India had an excellent weather forecasting system, which didn't exist in the 1970s. They could predict exactly where the cyclone would hit. The state of Odisha has a very good chief minister who organized society, brought in buses so people could be transported out of the crisis area. And of course, civil society Odisha, all sorts of associations helped on this. And after the cyclone, not one single person died out of hunger or disease coming from the disaster, which was normal in the past. So when you have a stronger overall society, that society will be much more resilient. And this is a paradox, because climate change will bring more disaster, more of nature hitting back, more of Mother Earth sending this message to us: you are on the wrong path, you need to change. On the other hand, societies are stronger everywhere in the world and much better prepared to handle these catastrophes. So it's all about a strong society, but which is then of course planning well, leading well when it comes to crisis.
Indeed, sir. Sir, now, as you stated in your opening intervention as well, that leadership do matters. So, when we talk about climate change and its related actions and how the world should respond to this global warming, the temperature rising, and these issues, so there is an always push from the Western world and the Western hemisphere that we should shift from the traditional sources of power to the renewable energies like solar energy or wind energy, and investing more in this. So, but there has been an issue with the developing world that these technologies, these high-end technologies, have a huge cost. And as we know that the developing world and their GDP and their gross assets are very much stressed, and very much stressed to a greater extent due to this pandemic. So, sir, how do you find that the Western world should handle this problem? Because there is always the issue of this transfer of technology. How should people and about the contribution of the developmental assistance in these innovations, sir? So how do you think that people will be able to handle, and especially the Western countries will be able to contribute much in this? How can this be resolved?
The good news is that this is very much a question from the past. It's true. I mean, 10 years back, whatever you say is right. Because at that time, still renewable energy was much more costly than coal. And if you wanted a nation to make the transformation from coal into oil and gas into renewables, it came at a cost, and you had to ask someone to cover that cost, either the government of that nation or the taxpayers or some international institution. But of course, that's not the case any longer, because the price of solar energy has fallen by 90% in 10 years. It's fantastic. The price of wind has also fallen dramatically, but solar is the main winner. And now solar is cheaper anywhere in the world. So there is no matter of compensating for the cost of making the transformation from coal to solar. It's pure business sense. And that's why also the entire debate is moved quite a lot from the climate talks. I mean, there will be climate talks in Glasgow in the UK at the end of this year, but that's no longer the driving force in the change. The driving force in the change is not business, because it's a business opportunity to create renewable energy and make the investments. And in the UN climate talks, there are quarrels about how much aid should the developed world provide to the developing world. And I'm absolutely in favor of the developing world providing more, but it's much, much less relevant than in the past, because it's simply a business opportunity to provide the green energy and the green developments. And even in the poorest of the states, like in Africa, if you go some decades back, development aid was a big part of the economy. It's no longer, nowhere. I mean, even in the extreme poor nations in Africa, development aid is always less than 5% of the economy. The United Nations is always less than 1%. It's like 0 point something of the economy. So the entire initiative is kind of moved into business, and business can do this without any subsidy because it's simply cheaper.
Indeed, sir. So I'll now be asking a very interesting question from your country as well. So in 2021, Climate Change Performance Index ranked 61 countries about how they have progressed, how they have reduced their carbon footprint, energy consumption, greenhouse emissions, renewable energy, and climate policy. In this, I'm pleased to know that your country is ahead with us. You are been ranked at 8. Norway has been ranked at 8, and India on number 10. So, in this index, in its observation, it clearly states that Norway has a high degree of equality and inclusivity in the policy process. What world can learn from the Norway in the fight against this issue and the sustainable development?
I think on equality, it's an interesting historical development in Norway, because if you go like 100 years back, we had very, very high class divisions, and the labor movement, the working class was revolutionary, wanting revolution, and business didn't want to give in and give anything to the labor. But then basically the main actors of society decided we are into this together. Business decided we cannot develop our plans without our employees, because they are the brains, is the hard work of our people to develop our industries. And at the same time, the labor movement decided we don't want to go for revolution, we want to go for gradual reforms. And that set out a process of cooperation between trade unions and business, which developed a more equal society. And of course, at the same time or later, we got a very strong women's liberation movement. We very recently had a conservative government of Norway, and the prime minister, the minister of foreign affairs, and the minister of finance, all three were women. And that was not a radical left-wing government, it was a conservative government. And also here, India can take quite some pride. I mean, it's still a long way to go, but India's had a foreign minister, which is a woman, a finance minister, which is a woman. And of course, if you go back, Indira Gandhi was even indeed the prime minister. So India is well ahead of a number of other nations when it comes to issues like this. But societies become stronger and better if they involve every person, because everyone has a contribution to make. And it's the hard and smart work of people who make a nation strong. Cannot be strong if you don't work hard. And if you want everyone to work hard, you need to make sure that everyone is on board in the ship, and we are not leaving someone at the shores.
Indeed, sir. Sir, you also mentioned about a lot about the International Solar Alliance and how France and India collaborated and brought up such a nice idea when it was on the sidelines of COP21, the Paris Agreement. So, how do you think that this International Solar Alliance will progress after the post-pandemic realities, especially in the developing world?
I've repeatedly said that solar is not the cheapest energy in the world. There still is a problem in some of the developing nations, and the problem is a matter of lack of technology, but also that business see a risk. An Indian company may think that it's easier to invest in Mumbai than in the countryside of Uttar Pradesh. The Indian company may believe that it's easier to invest at home in Delhi than in Malawi in Africa. And that risk should be taken by public money. I mean, governments of the richer part of the world should make development aid, but they should use the development aid as the risk alleviation tool for business, meaning that the main investment is done by a solar power company or a wind power company. But if there is an added risk, because there is a war in the place, or it's a very poor government in the place, or simply the society is lacking in development, then that risk should be taken by government money, because then you will get a lot more done. And all experience in development aid over the century is that what is provided as a gift tend to be poorly handled. People get the gift, but then it's mismanaged and not used well. If it's a business opportunity, you invest and you reinvest and you create a improving economy. It's much more effective. And then think of how fast development can happen. China, of course, is the fastest developing nation, big nation in the history of the world. 40 years back, around 1980, China was poorer than Africa, much poorer than Africa. Nearly all Chinese were dirt poor. Now China is on the verge of becoming a high-income country, and some of the cities of China are the most modern anywhere in the world. India is still behind China on this development path, but picking up fast, and development can happen very, very fast. But the driving force in this is business. It's not development aid. Governments need to make the market to help lead the charge, but it's about mobilizing the forces of business and society, which is driving the change.
Indeed, sir. As I was looking on the WhatsApp, because we invited few questions, and there are a lot of responses, and I tried my level best to provide them with each as an opportunity. So, sir, the first question I have received from my team is that after the pandemic, the biggest issue that the world will encounter is tackling the biological waste that is produced due to COVID-19. How one shall proceed to disposal of the waste, and will the environment be harmed during this process?
Yeah, that's a big issue. One issue is plastics. Nearly all hygienic products we make, like masks, they have plastic elements, either fully plastic or at least plastic elements. And we can see some of these getting into nature, animals being entangled in them or being even killed by eating them. You see seabirds diving down, picking some plastic and feeding the chick with the plastic, and then killing their own children. So it's very, very sad to see. I mean, a whale was dying in Thailand a few months back and was vomiting plastic bags while dying. So taking much better care of all these waste coming from the COVID-19, and also, of course, the biological products, which may even be directly toxic, is a key task. Then we need to build up better waste handling systems, and we should make those companies who produce the products responsible for handling them. That's the polluter pays principle. Or when it comes to plastic, it's what we call extended producer responsibility, meaning that if, say, Coca-Cola is putting bottles into the environment, they need to be responsible for bringing it back. If Unilever India is putting out plastic products in the supermarkets, well, they need to be responsible for handling them. Business cannot handle this company by company, and business should then provide the economic resources which are needed for a government to solve the problem. All this is doable. It's just about creating the leadership, but it's indeed a huge problem that we are creating by our way of handling the COVID-19, and we need to handle that new problem also.
Indeed, sir. I will now invite an in-person question from Abhimanyu Mishra. who has two pertinent questions. So, Abhimanyu Mishra, are you present? Please unmute yourself and ask the question. Abhimanyu Mishra?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, you are perfectly audible.
Right. All right. So first of all, thank you so much, sir, for giving actually enlightening us about so much of depth into all of this that you've just spoken about, right? I actually had a lot of questions, to be very honest, like a lot of questions, but the team actually restricted me to only two. So I mean, I'll just present first question, which is totally in regards with the education system in India, which is SDG number 4, which is quality education for that matter. Sir, in India last year we actually saw the modernizing of Indian education system after the British era, which was the theoretical system which was introduced by British to us. We actually saw that modernizing according to the COVID norms that we were following in India. However, still, I mean, every one of us are students here, and everyone feels that in India still the system does not have a very credible and a decent structure in taking examinations. Just like if we consider it with the model of Finland or Australia, India is still modernizing that particular structure for them. So could you please suggest us something, or to the something like a plan of action for the government of India as to how can they take those examinations, considering that people here lack in certain areas, or in most of the India, people actually lack uh, education or internet infrastructure as well.
Yeah, I'm absolutely no expert on Indian education, but I just want to make the point that education, as you say, is the key. If you look to those nations who have developed the fastest, it's about a vibrant economy, business, it's about a strong state or dedicated state, and it's about prioritizing education. Because there are hardly any extremely poor on this planet who can read and write. Nearly all the extremely poor are illiterate. You see that in India also. If you see a person who's really poor in India, will nearly always also be illiterate. So bringing people to education is so important. What system India should apply, I cannot tell. I think you can tell better. I think what you say that exams are key because you need a merit-based system. System should not be like if your father or mother is in the politics or say local, you should have advantages. There should be the same opportunity for everyone. True, it's more difficult for a farmer, a small-scale farmer in say Bihar, to bring his children to education than from a highly educated person in Delhi. And that's for sure still the case. But still, to create the same opportunities for everyone is the way forward. Then you get a society with more mobility and where the best brains are better used. So a rigorous system for merit-based education, I think, is key in any nation, because it's difficult. Rich, well-connected people tend always to have a way, either by corruption or by connections or whatever, to promote their children. But at least to try to get a strictly merit-based system, I think is very important.
Right, sir. So my second question to you was on the if we club SDG goal number 8 and 9, then we talk about business in in whole, for that matter. So as you mentioned, China, that it is a very faster growing, or maybe a rapid going, we can say a rapid going concept for businesses to get attracted and come to China and place their models. And so last year we've seen, like, after shifting to Biden government from Trump government in United States of America, on United States of America, a lot of economies of countries are actually dependent upon. So I read this somewhere that Chinese, while everyone was struggling in because of COVID, Chinese actually acquired a lot of Western businesses for that matter. So I just wanted to know as to if everybody, like every country, come in unity, and they would want to grow their businesses, because everyone knows that we cannot isolate a country like China for that matter. So how could we grow our businesses without the interference of China in regards to global trade affairs and economy?
We need to work very closely with China, of course, with the West as well. The way forward, as I see it, is for all these major economies in the world, the Western economies, the Chinese, India, and others, to work together. The idea that we kind of decouple will just make everyone much poorer. It's a recipe for poverty and disaster. And of course, the West has tended not to understand China well, in my view. China is very different from the West. I mean, we Westerners are missionaries. We tend to believe that if everyone is following our political system, the world will be a better place. That's not the Chinese way. The Chinese don't export their political system. They understand that India, or for that matter Europe, will never get a political party like the leading party in China, and not get a political system like what China has. The Chinese political system goes back 2,000-3,000 years, like Indian culture, and it cannot and will not be changed very fast. In the West, people say that China cannot be innovative because the system is authoritarian. It has been proven completely wrong. China is very innovative. 3 out of the 10 biggest companies in the world are now Huawei, Tencent, and Alibaba are now all Chinese. And if you look to the year 2050, the predictions are the Chinese economy will be by far the biggest in the world. On the second place, you will have India and the United States. It will true, of course, mean that per capita, the United States will be far richer than India, that the economy of the United States and India will be second. And on the fourth place will be Indonesia. No European nation except Germany will be among the 10 biggest economies in the world. So you will see a complete shift from the 20th century, which was all about the United States and Europe, into the 21st century, where Asia will be the lead in the world, and with these 2 giants, China and India, at the forefront. And remind yourself, that was how it was in most of human history. Up until, if you go back to the year 1700, China and India combined was 60% of the world economy, maybe even 70% of the world economy. And then because of colonialism and a few hundred years of weakness, both in China and India, they dropped down, and at liberation, the Indian economy was maybe 1 or 2% of the global economy. But now, of course, it's rapidly gaining speed and coming back. And in my view, 21st century will be all about Asia, and China and India being the two dominant, most important nations in Asia and in the world.
So,
Thank you, sir.
as
Thank
you rightly said, that China and India will be the 2 rising star for the economy as well as the global leadership. And I would famously attribute, even in the papers, that elephant and dragon can dance together. So indeed, sir, there is a pertinent question also, sir, before I take a question from our own Secretary General, that is about the organic farming and the zero budgeting concept of agriculture, sir. Because now what we have seen is that in the developing world, if we talk about the sustainable development as a whole, the farming, because it is an economic concept that first the primitive, that is the primary sector grows, then the secondary, and then the tertiary sector. Then the economy gradually lifts into a second phase of development, sir. So we see that now the concept of organic farming is something that has been in discussions, and it has a considerable now attention from all the developing world as well. So how do you think that this, along with the concept of zero budgeting farming, so how do you think that the developing world should involve itself and have a plan of how to proceed with this concept in these 2 dimensions?
I suggest to look to Andhra Pradesh, because I think that's the front runner on this business. About 1 million farmers in Andhra Pradesh, 1 out of 6 million farmers, and of course many more, if you include the family members, have made the transition into zero emission farming. And that's using less pesticides, using less fertilizer, using all the waste from agriculture as the fertilizer for the next crop. And the good news is that it's both good for the economy because you get a better crop and then a better income. And of course, it's much better for Mother Earth, that goes without saying. And it's much better for the health of the farmers because if you don't use pesticides, well, you don't get inhaling any pesticides either. So it's a win-win-win for health, for environment, and for the economy. And if you can translate the experiences from Andhra Pradesh to the whole of India, and indeed to the rest of the world, you will have enormous progress on this kind of farming. But it's very important to always remember that this cannot be a sort of farming which is going back to the past, where you have much less output because we need food in the world. There are still people who are starving, and still many people who want a more varied, better nutrition. So we need more and better food, and that's why we need to move into modern green, modern zero budget, zero emission farming, not the old backward thing. But these new methods are now existing, and Andhra Pradesh is leading this charge.
Indeed, so we have a state also that is declared, that has been declared as an organic farming state, that is the state of Sikkim. And
Absolutely.
if you visit in India next time, and we'll surely invite you there to just see how the organic farming is and how it's done. And there is a
you are absolutely right, sir. I mean, Sikkim was even before Andhra Pradesh, but Sikkim is much smaller, so that's why Andhra Pradesh is a big populous state.
Big
so
state,
that's why.
Yeah. Indeed, no issues there. So now, sir, I would now invite our Model UN Secretary General, Ms. Rashi Mohan. She has a very good question to what I asked, and it's just like a follow-up, sir. Ms. Rashi Mohan.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving me the stage. And thank you so much, Eric, sir. We have everything you've spoken here has been so enlightening for all of us. The only question that I have is on what possible issues can India and Norway collaborate possibly in the upcoming decade for mutual benefits of both the nations?
I think maybe obvious areas for cooperation are everything which is ocean related, because Norway is a very small nation compared to India. And you need to look into where Norway has some particular areas of contribution which can be of interest to India. And I think that's very much related to oceans, because Norway has very long experience with fishing, for sure. We have managed the fishing resources very well. They are in abundance because of good management. We are #1 fish farming nation in the world. I mean, there is more fish farming in China, but that's mainly in the lakes. When it comes to oceans, we are the #1 fish farming nation in the world. And we have been I can say the best performer when it comes to offshore oil drilling. But that technology and expertise can now be turned into offshore wind technology. And we are a big shipping nation, and we are going green in shipping, I think, faster than nearly any other nation. For instance, we have by far the biggest number of electrical ferries now in Norway. I mean, we have many fjords where you need a ferry to cross the fjord, and these ferries are now increasingly going electric. And we will even now very soon have the first, I think, in the world, which is a rapid moving boat, which of course can carry a number of passengers, which is going electric. So I would recommend that everything related to this, but of course to the renewable energies coming from the oceans, like offshore wind, that's a prime area for cooperation between India and Norway. But of course, any sort of cooperation is good, and I would strongly recommend Norwegian companies to invest in India, as well as of course Indian companies to work with Europe. I have been involved very recently with a Norwegian company which will set up on the first electric battery factory in Norway. And they're closely working now with some Indian partners to see if they can work together and make parallel electric battery factories in India and in Norway. And of course, batteries is the key component for an electric vehicle, whether it's a car or a three-wheeler or even a two-wheeler.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you there, Rashi. Now, it was indeed a very privilege, sir, that you joined us despite having some technical issues, but it was a very pleasant and an interactive session as well, because apart from the simulation of the entire model UN, about 117 participants, despite having their committees, have joined, and it's really something that has been clear from our side, and it is a real privilege that we were able to discuss on various issues pertaining to sustainable development. How can we work together? And as we say in India, that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, this line is always one of the taglines which we have heard in the UN stage, as well as in it's our heritage that we consider world as a family, as a society, that we can work. We may have disagreements, we may have discord, but at the end of the day, discussion and deliberations are the key forward. Discussion is the key forward, sir. So namaste, shalom, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for providing us with a vision and telling us how to bring together, how being together at this point is very important, especially when nature is bouncing back. And I also really liked how you mentioned about tackling the waste that is being produced because of this global pandemic. Also, I would like to share with everybody present here that Dr. Binish Desai, who is known as the Recycle Man, made a brick out of PPE kits and the mask, and which is much stronger than the conventional. So these sort of innovations can be called upon, and then we can all together handle the biological waste being produced by the pandemic. Also, sir, I'm extremely grateful to you for providing us with a string of sequential thinking put forth with utmost intellect. We are extremely privileged to host you. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste. Thank you. Uh,
Thank
Okay, with this, I would now request the participants to join their respective breakout rooms. We are opening the breakout room shortly. All those who have not renamed themselves are requested to rename themselves